All right, I'd like to bring this meeting of the West South Public School Board to order. Ms. Lee, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sarah, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Carr?
Here.
Ms. Deal?
Here.
Mrs. Kaiser? Here. Mr. Burns? Excused. Mr. Becker? Ms. Lee? Here. Mr. Sikich?
Present.
Mr. Keller?
Here.
President Lee?
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do we have any modifications to the agenda this evening?
There are no modifications.
All right, I'll move right into the superintendent's report.
Good evening. Representative Kitchens working on bill to prevent 50 million in funding for early literacy from going into surplus. State Representative Joel Kitchens is working on a bill to prevent $50 million in funding for early literacy going into the state's surplus if the legislature fails to release the $50 million allocated to fund mandated reading changes in Wisconsin schools by June 30th. So just as a follow-up, according to Act 20, right now, there have not been any funds that have been associated with that particular bill that was passed, I believe it's about a year and a half ago now. And so there's been a fight, and it's actually kind of held up in courts to try to figure out how do we fulfill this this mandates that's been currently has been unfunded. So there's work to get reimbursements because that was promised when the bill was passed. So this particular legislation is definitely directly related to that. On a different note, I do want to address very briefly some of the one in particular, the executive order that was recently issued that I've received a number of calls about concerning how we're supporting our kids in our schools. We are 100% behind all of the kids at WAWM, and we will respect the rights of our students and our parents. And if any law enforcement would choose to visit our schools, we would definitely not comply, but with warrant, with proper notification and identification, just as we do with anyone else. But at the same time, protecting the students that are inside of our school is our number one priority as a district. Further information will be forthcoming this week to parents to give more details. We are consulting with legal to determine, make sure that we're doing everything by the book, make sure that we're not violating laws ourselves. At the same time, protecting our kids is our number one priority. Much ado about nothing. I want to bring forth, Shelley, you're going to come up and introduce our cast members.
All right, good evening, everyone and board. If you did not see this show, let me tell you, you missed a great one. I'm not real familiar with Shakespeare, I will admit publicly, but they had me laughing and I really, really enjoyed the show. So it's my honor to introduce tonight a new face, to the board meetings anyways, Miss Peggy Link, who was the director for this show, and she's going to introduce the cast members that are here with us tonight.
Thank you. I have 4 of the 25 cast members that I worked with tonight. Cal Sterwinski, who played Claudio, Isaiah Stewart, who plays Benedict, and the next one is Georgia Prober, who plays Hero, and Jaslyn Lang Brown, who plays Beatrice. And just wanted to let you know a couple of things. I believe this is the 3rd year that we're part of the West Dallas West Department Rec Department, and the program keeps growing, and I'm really thrilled with that. And part of it is because we're growing, we're getting more interest from the kids, and so therefore tomorrow, we are doing not 1 student matinee, but 2, because the entire Frank Lloyd Wright School wanted to come and we didn't want to say no. Let's see, what else do we talk about? Just a couple of things about what I wound up doing was, when I knew I was going to be doing this show, I also knew that I did not want to do a 2.5 hour or 2:45 show. So I spent the summer cutting it down and just kind of saying, okay, let's just give me what I need, see what we can cut and still get the story across and have fun with it. And then in August, I showed the Kenneth Branagh movie to whoever wanted to come see it. And then I did a little bit of a workshop so that the kids were introduced to Shakespeare, to the language, to some of the tricks of poetry and prose and all of that kind of thing. And to get them comfortable and say, yes, you can do this, come audition. And then narrowed it down. And so now I'd like to ask my cast members some questions and let them talk. Come on up, because you need the microphone, right?
Do you need the microphone? Yes.
So the first thing I want to know is, what was the hardest part about this production?
Really just adjusting to the language, because it's from a totally different time period, and it was hard to match modern inflections to old language, and making sure you can keep that emotion and keep that stuff and make the message of what you're saying clear to the audience. That was pretty difficult, but I think we handled it well.
I would agree. Anybody else have a hard?
I think, like Calvin said, a hard part was the language. But yeah, trying to get that to really resonate with you, to try and understand what exactly it all means and how it's actually really similar to modern life.
What was the most fun part of the production?
I think by far the most fun part was getting to know everybody better. When you're doing a play, you tend to have a smaller cast than when you're doing a musical, which ranges anywhere from like 40 to 60 people. A play is usually anywhere from like even 10 to like what we had, like about 25, I
Mhm.
think. So getting to know everybody better it's just like, this is an outlet for us to like share creative expression, and like we all are here for the same reason. So we developed more like bonds with each other. So that was just like, it was really nice.
I'd say the most fun with it would be adding character and personality to a Shakespeare show, because some people, when they hear Shakespeare, they'll get bored or they won't understand it as easily. So to be able to go out and do something that's a little out there, you wouldn't think of Shakespeare doing that, and then getting a laugh after it is really fun and really special.
Anything else that any of you want to mention about what you learned or?
I feel like this show was different than a bunch of different other ones. Was number one, like Georgia said, how you can get those same connections with people since you're not trying to just simply remember everyone's name because of how many people there are. You can actually learn different things about them, share things in common, have laughs. And it just felt like really easy to kind of balance this with school, where sometimes with a musical, having the musical and dance aspects of it, it can be kind of a challenge to keep everything separate and not interfering. But I was still able to keep my grades up, and yeah.
Good job.
I'd say when you ask someone in our cast like what their favorite production is, they'll usually tend to say a musical. And that being like for our big dance sequences, the amazing solo and ensemble songs that you hear. But to be able to go out and get a crowd to laugh and get them to feel things without having the big dance breaks and without the songs is something that I'm really proud of doing along with this cast, because I don't think anyone in the cast should be left in the dust. I think everyone brought something extremely important and everyone belonged in that cast. So to go and do what we did without any songs is something I'm proud of.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
That's okay.
The director.
Wow, Rebecca.
For her to give.
Are we all going?
Okay.
How did you experience English major? I also have an example from the show here.
Yeah, you might have to be.
Yeah, I know.
All right, 1, 2, 3, much ado.
Tomorrow.
Community visits and meetings. So a couple of weeks ago, I started superintendent tag-alongs where I'm going on visits with central office staff. In particular, trying to understand how they're performing their jobs, what they do on a daily basis. I sit in on some meetings they have and just kind of give them feedback. So it's really a lot of coaching that's taking place. Some of the staff members are in the financial department, student services, as well as leading and learning. That's where I've been kind of targeting. And visits have been so far to Horace Mann, West Milwaukee, Hoover, and Franklin. Board member one-on-one meetings and school visit. On the 14th of January, I participated in a podcast with 2 DOCI students, Nate Smith and Daniel Brandt. On the 15th of January, city schools meeting. The 20th Quadrant B superintendent's meeting concerning the weather forecast. My daughter was definitely did not want me to miss that particular meeting. Please attend and be on time. The 21st and 23rd strategic planning preparation meeting, you'll kind of hear some things that have come about with those discussions. 22nd through the 24th, I attended along with several board members the Wisconsin State Educators Convention at the Baird Center. And also, I think on the next slide, I had the opportunity to present at one of the forums, and it was a great event where I, standing side by side with some of my colleagues, and I represented the urban districts. So we had an urban, suburban, and a rural district perspective on leadership. In particular, I talked about our work in listening and learning sessions, how they led into the referendum sessions, and then how a successful referendum came out of all that information we gathered along the lines. Talked about some of the challenges we had with the referendum and the importance of perceptions and how to lead through out of all that. And now the work that we're doing with SAIL, kind of focus on that as well. And then on Thursday, the 23rd, DOCI exhibition night. So those were the events, and that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening.
All right, thank you very much. I'll move on to item 7, public comments for this evening. Currently, there's no one signed up for public comments. If there's anyone in the room or anyone who is listening online, there should be, if you're in the room, you need to go to the back of the room, and there is a tab there to sign up for public comments. If you're in Zoom, there should be a link in the chat to do so. And as usual, I don't see anyone rushing back from in the room, so I'll wait 15 seconds for anyone online who wanted to do that. Seeing no one signing up, I will close public comments at this time. Move on to item 8, our board reports this evening, starting with 8.1, a review of the board calendar. Today we have a regular Board of Education meeting and executive session, and then we have a strategic workshop, strategic plan workshop. On February 10th, we have a regular Board of Education meeting and winter fall screener data presentation and AGR data review workshop. On February 17th, we have a board workshop with our audit presentation. And on February 24th, we have a regular board meeting and then a financial ability and efficiency workshop, several. Second Friday in January 2025 pupil count, 25-26 enrollment projections, 25-26 estimated revenue limit calculation, and 25-26 preliminary budget projections. Moving on to 8.2, our board committee reports this evening, starting with 8.2.1, employee engagement and culture. Mr. Keller.
Thank you, President Lee. We met last week, Tuesday, the 21st. First thing we talked about was our vacancy report, which is currently at as of that date was at 1.18. We also talked about contract timeline. It's that time of year. So January 31st is going to be the deadline for individuals to qualify early notification for retirement or resignation for the 2025-26 academic year. And then from there, we'll go through the non-renewal process in terms of getting approvals for that, requesting coming to the board for all of that information, and just moving through until we get to June 2nd, when we will plan to have all those contracts hopefully returned. We also talked a little bit just being proactive about the draft reallocation of staff matrix. So there's been a few changes to that. Criteria, there's different criteria, 5 different pieces, and we really look at each piece of criteria first, and then we'll only move on to the second criteria or subsequent criteria if there is a tie. So for instance, criteria 1 is years of service with the district and current assignment. Criteria 2 would then be additional roles at the current assignment. Criteria 3 would be additional licensure. Criteria 4 would be any corrective action, and then criteria 5 would be recent summative evaluations. So that will be in place for this year if there is any need for any staff changes. Winter job fairs, we have a number of which that we will be looking to attend February 18th and February 20th. It looks like there will be some, and then a couple more in April. We talked a little bit about EAP usage and how that's kind of changed a little bit over the year. Last year, I think we had 26 cases, a tick up from the year before, but down from what it was a couple of years ago. So that continues to be a used benefit within our district. The final thing that we talked about, and we spent a lot of time on this, was our substitute teachers and our substitute program. So what we're trying to do as a committee is really try to brainstorm different ideas and ways to make it more enticing for individuals to want to substitute within our district. So we talked about things such as even changing the name from like substitute teacher to guest teachers to show a little bit more importance about the role. And then just talked a little bit about ways that we can enhance other benefits or compensation to, again, make it a little bit more appealing. So those are conversations we're going to continue to have. It's something that we're pretty dedicated to as a committee, to again make sure that we're seeing less of that, those open substitute roles as we move forward. And that was our report.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Keller. Does anyone have any questions regarding Mr. Keller's report? Or any suggestions for future items on agendas? I have one, Mr. Keller, regarding our attempts to increase the ability to get exit interview data. So I don't know how much, I know it's come up not too distant past in some of your agendas, but if there hasn't been any additional work or thought about that, could we think about compensating individuals for their time for an exit interview as part of the process that might have to be done in conjunction with our financial committee, but something to try to have a carrot to, because people may not have much incentive to participate in an exit interview, but maybe if there's a financial one, they would participate in that.
Yeah, we can talk about it within committee. It worries me a little bit with my background about compensating for feedback, but I think it's worth looking into to see, especially if other districts do something similar, and what that might look like. So yeah, it's definitely something we can explore a little bit more.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions or future agenda items for Mr. Keller's committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to 8.2.2, financial stability and efficiency, which Mr. Burns not here, so Ms. Kaiser will be doing that.
All right, thank you. We met tonight prior to the meeting. We discussed in about 2 weeks' time, we're gonna have an audit workshop. With a CPI update, the CPI for 2024 was 2.95%, which is close to our anticipated 3%. So our goal as a committee, what we're talking is to get a CPI number out there and approved by mid-April. But then if it goes up or we're able to give more, we can go back and add on to it. So if we can guarantee one number and we are able to bring it up a couple points, we can go back and change that. But we can give up the teachers a guaranteed. We are looking at the compensation model. Post Act 20, most districts moved to a performance model, and now everyone's going back to a compensation model, which we kind of use. So there's going to be a committee created of teachers to design a compensation model. We are anticipating a year's worth of work on this to really figure out what's right for West Dallas, West Milwaukee, and our unique opportunities and what we offer. The committed fund balance at this time, there's $3 million for retiree benefits and $2.7 million for the compensation model. There was $700,000 in there, which was spent. We already spent it on the teacher computer refresh. We'll be recommending upcoming. There'll be a recommendation upcoming regarding future funding to that. And that's my report.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Kaiser. Any questions for Ms. Kaiser regarding her report?
I think Aaron and I talked about this recently with the expected CPI being at like 2.9%. Keeping in mind that this is a biennial budget year, and so there may be sort of a delay as to what the total amount will be, depending on budgets, depending on how soon we can get some of that gray area cleared up, and then how soon we can get the budget passed. So a lot of those things will come into play. We are also looking at a mid-April to sort of get what I would say a preliminary contract out with that figure. Is that what am I saying it right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, April 14th we discussed tonight. Yeah.
And then at some point, once the budget is approved, then that a total amount will be adjusted. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the delicate dance here for the kind of way in deeper with the details is that if we give CPI at 2.95, but everyone gives 3.4, we get right back in the song and dance we've been in with underpaying staff. But the challenge that Dr. Robinson alluded to, and so Ms. Kaiser, is that by going early, you might not know. So you go early to give teachers a commitment of what we're going to do. That way they kind of know it's out there, but then we might have to go back to the table and go, hey, 2.95 was great. Everyone gave 3.2. The difference is what we'd seek for approval later if we did so.
Thank you for that clarification. I have one question regarding the comp model. You said a teacher committee to evaluate. Is it going to be teachers and other staff, or are we only looking at a comp model that's going to be affecting
What was
the staff?
What was explained to us tonight was it's going to be a process of teachers who have 10 years or less in the district, and then teachers who are 10 years or more, a 50-50 model of people represented, a limited number per school. So then we have representation from all the schools. But we're hoping for it to be teachers who want to be involved in the process, not just assigned or nominated by a principal, I believe is our outlook. So then the teachers are the ones owning the process.
And the goal will be to have the staff in the district build the model, and then that structure will then be in place for EAs and secretaries, even though that may not be fleshed out by 26, 27. That's a different employee group.
Right.
Yeah. So doing those together would make things, exponentially more difficult. So.
Okay.
But I think the structure is the most important piece there. Like if the committee values education and longevity, then you can map a structure over for secretaries, EAs, maintenance that reflects those same priorities with a different group. But
okay, whatever the process is or is planned to be, I think it's just important to make sure to communicate that so that if we're working on teaching staff or licensed staff first, credentialed staff, however you want to call it first, which might include teachers, but maybe also psychologists or social workers or something to that effect. But then let the other employee groups know that, we're not going to do you as well. It's just not going to happen first. So then people are aware of that. So I think that's just an important thing to communicate. Any other questions regarding Ms. Kaiser's report? Any items to consider at future agendas?
Compensating for exit interviews.
I have it down.
I know, it's a side note.
Yes, maybe to consider what that would be
Yeah.
and looking into
Mhm.
what our districts might do more. I think the data is important for us, and I think
Yeah.
understanding of, we can figure out ways to do it that would be meaningful, I think is important. All right, moving on to 8.2.3 Recreation and Community Services, Mr. Becker.
Thank you, sir. Okay, the Recreation and Community Services Committee met tonight. We touched on some construction updates. We've got phase one at touch-up stage at this point, so we're really close. Dealing with some minor issues, but there are strategies in place. Looks like phase two is going to begin in March, still on track. We've got some other updates around some of our schools, the Mitchell Playground. We've got some more concrete proposals coming in. Franklin Fieldhouse is still in a planning stage. Couple different competing interests there, and looking at phasing out some of the parking lot and playground construction. Irving soccer fields are done, and we have to give a special shout out to plumber by the name of Jay Zielinski from the city. He's a former district employee, and he helped us to winterize over there and save us, make sure our investments are taken care of. So thanks to Jay. If you know him, let him know. On the strategic plan update, we have a bit of a delay. It's just been a lot of competing priorities around the holidays, busy season, but there are a lot of things that are in progress as we go along. So it's not like we've been looking for just this document to start doing anything. We've got good progress on things like trying to standardize how we run programs from the middle school to the high school, trying to get a little bit better collaboration between the coaching staffs, things like that. Couple of potentials out there, but I'll spare you the link since we've got a long agenda tonight. We have no new business. No, we did, but I'll leave that one for another day. I think we're good. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Becker. Any questions regarding Mr. Becker's report? Just have one regarding the strategic plan. Is there a new proposed?
Back to February, when we're gonna be having like the recap meeting with the big group, sharing the findings and the progress and some of the things. Again, we're already in motion, but still trying to iron out and make sure things are in a really concrete form. Things like there's things like the website that's been updated, so things like that are good, but it's things like, profile of a West Dallas athlete, for instance, is something that just takes a little bit of time to put into words and get them to sit down and put pen to paper. So there's other things going on too, like we talked about some of the communications as far as building a better image, kind of the same sort of approach we took with the referendum, where it's a little bit more deliberate, a little bit better designed, and something with a long-term strategy to it. So I think that's part of what's taking time, is trying to make sure it's good, but we may have let great get in the way of good, so to speak. We spend too much time trying to refine it, but
Okay,
it's coming.
all right, thank you. Any suggestions for future agenda items from Mr. Becker's committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Becker. Move on to 8.3, board member reports for community events. Community events, board members attendant would like to report on. Ms. Carr?
I actually have two things I'd like to report on. So I did go to the state convention, and the WASB state convention. And, I'm a lifelong learner. So it was, I was in my element, of course, and it was in things that I was very interested in. But I think the thing that was, that stood out most to me was that it really gave board members an opportunity to learn something new so that we can have relevant conversation with our administrators. And I think that normally when, as a board member now, they come to us and they have all of the rich ideas. And I thought it was nice for us to be able to go and, I went to something on retaining staff. I went to something on compensation, and it helps us be able to speak to those issues that we find really important. So I thought that was a really beneficial time. Also, I, again, went to Dodke's project-based learning presentations. And just a couple of observations. I've really felt like the actual projects really matched the amount of time that they worked on them. So in other words, there was no, Mom, I have to have a project done by, Wednesday night. I'm, sitting at the kitchen table. It was so clear with the research and with all of the things that they put together that it was a longevity thing. And I again, I'm just amazed at how it's about the process, not necessarily the product. And even though those products are gorgeous, you just have to have a long process in place to get to that point. And it very impressed me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carr. Ms. Deal?
I went to this, I was gonna report on the same two events that Ms. Carr reported on. So I was able to go to the state convention this year again. Of course, it's always like Jane said, it's a great way for us as board members to get an opportunity to, one, talk to other board members, get ideas. And like I was able to go on some sessions about board communication with the public. I also went to one on absenteeism, which I think is very relevant. But I also was able to go to Docky's exhibition night. Again, reiterating what Ms. Carr said, it's just to see some of these kids, what they come up with, just the creativity, how they take the information that they're learning and how they use that to create these projects. But just I'm saying this personally myself, one of my kids goes to Docky, and to watch the transition from last year when he was a freshman to this year was phenomenal. I had a kid who went 2 exhibition nights in a row where it was like, you could barely get anything out of him. He wasn't comfortable in his element. And this last time, I have a picture of him. He's got a smiling face. He's just like, he knew the material. He was confident in the material. And it was like a completely different child. And let me tell you, I know everything you could possibly know about acid rain. I asked him a question about it and I thought I was going to get the usual like 1, 2, and he talked my ear off the entire time all the way home about it. So it's just really great to just see like how that school, like that environment just allows these kids to really grow as students and as people. So I'm a big shout out to the Docky staff, because I know that they work really hard with all our students, getting to know them. And I know my son wouldn't be where he's at right now if it wasn't for them. So it was a really great experience. So
Thank you very much, Ms. Deal. Ms. Kaiser?
I also attended WASB last week and I wanted to give a real quick update on the delegate assembly. I voted with my 2504, decoupling public and private school funding. Upon hearing more information and more research on it, I did vote no on that, although as a group we had said we were going to vote yes. Upon hearing more information, it would not have been good for public schools. It did fail within the delegate assembly. I did vote against the 2508 accountability and school report card, as we discussed as a group. That one failed as well as a resolution. 2511 funding for school meal debt. I have been fighting for this one for 3 years. It finally passed. So this would encourage legislators to encourage the state to pay for breakfast and lunch for students. So that one finally passed after about 5 years of hearing it. Other than that, that's I went to a thing on what did I go to? My apologies. Oh, fiscal impacts of declining enrollment and how it affects so much our kids with disabilities and ELA and who are going to need the support if we're not going to have the proper funding. And so it's just a big concern shared by both urban, suburban, rural counties. It's not just we live in a diverse area. It's going to be everywhere.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kaiser. Anyone else want to report events they attended? All right, I'll just finish up by saying I also attended the conference, is able to go 2 days this year. A lot of good sessions, one on how to work with a self-funded health insurance, which was interesting, learning from a district that had done it, kind of the pros and cons that they had worked through, things you have to pay attention, things that are different, how it affects your audit, things like that. So that was interesting. And then also another one on leading with equity and how you can make sure that with all the things you're doing, if equity is an important piece of what we're doing in our strategic plan, which we'll hear about here in a little bit. There was some districts that were talking about what things that they did. Some districts planned in time. They actually started school late on Mondays, where they gave 2 hours to the staff to meet to talk about their equity pieces that they wanted to do and how they could implement those better. That was like something that they basically put to the community, like, we think this is important. The community said, yep, we'll figure it out. Our kids will not be starting until 10 a.m. on Mondays every day of the year. So it was an interesting thing to learn about. All right, and I won't have any other additional information items for 8.4. So move on to item 9, our consent agenda this evening. Starting with 9.1, approval of minutes from our regular Board of Education meeting on January 13th. 9.2, our employment summary. 9.3, our supplementary contracts, and 9.4, our financial summary. Does anyone need anything separated out? No, I would look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. We'll move on to our first action item this evening. Starting with 10.1, investment in financial management services RFP. We have Mr. Norris and Josh Barbian. Okay, yeah, take it away. Welcome.
I'll start this and I'll turn it over to Josh in a second, but this is a follow-up to the workshop we had a few weeks ago on the results of the financial services investment RFP. As we discussed a few weeks ago, PMA came in and just kind of blew us away. We feel that they're not only the best in the business, but certainly suited to help us both short and long term. So with that, I asked Josh to come tonight to introduce himself to you guys, get a face with the name. And ultimately, as I said before, we'll be back here in a few months once we have the construction management firm done, the RFP completed, and the owner's rep. Because once the timeline of a draw schedule, when the projects will happen, that better suits Josh and his firm to help figure out, well, when is the money need to be available. So for now, I thought it'd be best to have him come in. So.
Aaron, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm Josh Barbian with PMA. I've been there for over 15 years now, working with PMA. And we work with, I think Aaron had a couple notes on here. We do work with about 235 school districts. And I think we have about $1.5 billion, a little under that as of December, just in actual referendum proceeds for Wisconsin issuers on this. So as he said, our company really started off as like a bank company. So first and foremost, we want to kind of make sure that we're kind of protecting the assets, protecting the bond proceeds and kind of the funds of the district. So that is kind of first and foremost kind of our priority on the funds. And then the second piece is we want to try to maximize investment earnings on this too. So PMA doesn't really have any like inventory or anything that we're selling on the investment side. We're strictly a company that kind of competitively bids this out and we have got a bank network of I think about 1,200 banks right now. We work with like 50 securities dealers if we're looking at like treasuries, things like that. But we just strictly, as he said, work with, the finance office, kind of develop an investment plan that's going to, number one, service and fund the draw schedule that we're going to have for that. And two, we just kind of bid that out, bring a whole bunch of different investment options in, the local bank investment options for that. And then in discussions with the finance team, we're kind of developing a plan to kind of help fund those projects and try to maximize that interest earnings. So instead of just kind of using, kind of one source for the investment, it's a competitively bid, competition is good generally on the rate side, bringing that to the table. And that kind of fits in with our overall kind of investment plan for the fund. So the first piece we do is, again, we want to kind of protect the assets. We want to help maximize investment earnings for this, help the projects, right? Kind of fund the projects, possibly do some additional projects with the extra interest income. And then a very big component of this too is kind of on the reporting side. So as you guys are issuing tax exempt debt, we're investing it in the taxable market. So there's a lot of kind of hoops and reporting we have to do for the IRS with that. You guys are going to receive $70 million in bond proceeds. We're going to be investing those. So we'll make sure that there's just one, we've got that invested, per state statute, per federal statutes, per the district policy. But then there's also these different rules and regulations we need to meet for the IRS on that. So we're just kind of basically lots of meetings with the finance team, but we'll kind of be holding the hand through that. And then they'll say there'll be certain percentage spend downs that we need to spend out the funds by. So we just kind of make sure that we're aware of all the kind of rules associated with that. And then we do all of that reporting up front too. So we help with, something called arbitrage. We borrow tax exempt, we invest taxable. The difference on that is kind of what's known as that arbitrage number. So we track that. And then we do all sorts of different reporting kind of throughout the process. So we're going to be, working with the district a lot, really through the whole construction period, 2+ years, maybe up to 3 years, so through all of the various projects, kind of doing the reporting, doing cash flows as we're doing kind of throughout that. And then just helping to report on that. We might find additional investment opportunity. We help identify, hey, we're behind schedule, we're ahead of schedule. And then kind of a constant check-in on how do we have those funds invested? Is there any better strategies we can do with this? Kind of throughout that whole process. And at the end of the project, what we really want to do, the district is going to sign off on, or probably already has, that post-issuance compliance policy. So a lot of those things that is just the district needs to kind of make sure that we kind of have in order. We're kind of tracking all of that. So we have all the reporting, all the statements, all the documents for that. In the event there's ever an IRS audit or issue, that is really what our reporting is all for. Here's an audit. Hey, Josh, here you go. Here's all the IRS questions. We have kind of all that kind of put together on there.
And I think the one thing that I think is important for you guys to hear is what Josh hit on here is PMA has over 1,200 banks they partner with. So when we say, hey, we would like the most competitive investment strategy you can give us that is safe. Okay, they're going to bid out to 1,200 banks for CDs, treasury bills, short-term, long-term, like we're going to get the best bang for the buck. And some other financial firms have a smaller book of business. They mainly work with CDs, like you're limiting your resources. So I think some of that speaks to why there's so many school districts, especially amidst referendums that are passing left and right, working with PMA directly. And I think that when I mentioned long-term, with our district having a healthy fund balance, we have an opportunity with not having to have short-term borrow to continue that process well beyond a referendum issuance. So I think it's short-term, great for us now. We'll establish the draw schedule and investment strategy, but then long-term, we'll do the same thing with their firm too. So.
Yeah, one other point I think a lot of districts like do is that we are strictly do this competitive investment bidding process for this. The actual investment dollars, the funds of the district never leaves your tax ID. This isn't like an investment in PMA's name, right? We are just kind of bringing this to the table. We will give a recommendation of what we think is a really good investment plan. But ultimately, it's going to fall on Jeff and Aaron and Mike to kind of say, hey, take a look at all these options. We think this is going to be the best fit for the district. So we're truly just kind of bringing a lot to the table up front. We can definitely help with recommendations. We offer recommendations, but it's ultimately right on the existing finance team office to, hey, here's local rates. Here's other Wisconsin banks, national banks that are allowed to transact in Wisconsin. Bringing all that together and just, again, competition is typically a pretty good thing to help us, maximize that interest.
Any questions?
Questions from the board? Ms. Carr?
So, Josh, will we be assigned a lead person for the next 3 years or a team that will be, so we'll have some consistency?
Yep. Yeah, we have a large team. So I think we've got 170 employees. Our offices are in Milwaukee, so it's like a 14-minute drive for me down there.
Good.
I'm going to be the lead on this also. So I'll be the one kind of meeting with the finance team as often as they want. I think we're going to probably be really good friends, especially like condensed in the first couple of months.
And we'll develop a reporting sequence system for you guys to get comfortable.
Okay.
So that'll be something I'll review with the services team, the committee, and then it'll be sent to the whole board at some point, depending on how that communication works with the project manager. But then you guys will get monthly or quarterly reports based on kind of what we talk about.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
Other questions? All right. So if you have no other questions, I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Very
much.
much.
Thank
Thank you.
Moving on to 10.2, 25-26 course catalog updates. Miss Sage and Miss Bergman, welcome.
Good evening.
So for the course catalog updates, we are looking simply at some technical changes, some formatting. There isn't any shifts as far as like courses and those types of details that we're looking at for the 25-26 catalog. Essentially, we're looking at things like updating names and phone numbers that are in there. Previously, when the catalog was printed, it would come out with dark orange behind it. It was difficult to read it at times. And there used to be a section at the end that included information on Dotke, back from when Dotke had some different classes that were being offered. At this point, all of the classes are the same numbers, the same descriptions, so there's no need to separate out which of the high schools that it's talking about. So those are the primary changes that we're looking for the 25-26 course catalog.
Questions? Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I just want to note, so we did have a student come forward who was interested in increasing the AP options for underclassmen. So that was discussed. I know that is something that's going to be looked at in more depth to hopefully be available for the 26-27 school year.
Correct.
And that will include not only the current AP classes that we have, being able to open those to underclassmen if it is possible to do, but also additional new AP classes that we don't currently offer at all. So I just wanted to make that note of that. In case that student might be watching about this.
Yeah, correct. That would be for the 26-27 school year. We would be giving that consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you have a motion and a second. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to 10.3 or 25-26 open enrollment seats, and Ms. Bergen gets to stay with us.
Double header. I'm here to ask the board for 156 open enrollment seats. This number includes students who have been with us who are on tuition waivers for the 24-25 school year. That is 35 students who are on open enrollment tuition waivers and 121 new seats.
Questions? This is the same we were at from the workshop?
Yep.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. Then move on to 10.4, 25-26 DLVA open enrollment seats. Dr. Smith.
So I am asking that you do not cap our open enrollment seats. We follow the same criteria for open enrollment eligibility as the district. We monitor our enrollment through the state statute, the admissions policy, and our participation guidelines.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Move to approve.
Second. So I have a move in a second. Ms. Carr, you look like you might have a question.
No, I'm okay.
This is a little different than normal because,
Really quick. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
so it is a little bit different than normal, right? Normally we have seats that we, have specific ones open, but with a virtual academy, it's a little bit different as far as
so we
the
don't need
amount.
to cap it, is what she's saying.
We don't need to cap it as long as we have the staff to adhere
Got
to
it.
it. And so with
Got
the
it.
change in the bylaws where we're only focusing on the secondary students moving forward. So that's why this request came forward.
Yeah, and our admissions policy, which I just updated today, and I'll take it to my governance board for approval, will regulate the ratios of students to teacher, and then that will decide our total enrollment. So we won't just take unlimited.
Thank you.
I was surprised there was not a question about it. So yeah, that we're not just going to take and take. We will still
Yeah,
we
okay,
will
okay.
monitor that along with our staffing, of course.
Okay.
Yes,
I'm like-
that's all
All
been
right.
put in place. But I'm happy to answer any additional questions about that because we've worked on it quite a bit.
I'm good.
Limited. Okay. So we have a motion, second on that already. Ms. Carter, okay?
I am.
Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. I'll move on to item 11, our workshop this evening, strategic plan with Dr. Robinson, Ms. Lynn. And Yarbo. Okay, okay.
Presently.
Okay.
President. Yes. So we're excited tonight. Trying to, as I was telling Sarah, I'm trying to channel my inner Terrence right now. I'm dealing with a bad headache and a scratchy throat.
Oh, no.
But I am still excited about the work that we've already done as far as planning for tonight, and then the work that's going to occur in the next 4 to 5 months. And that's what we're going to focus on tonight. We want to give an overview of our strategic plan work. And I'm calling it Operation 2030 because our strategic plan is going to go from 25 until 2030. So it's a 5-year plan. I want to introduce Jody Landish, our secondary leadership coach. She's been helping me with the plan, and Jody Rodriguez is the director of urban leadership at ASA. She's also been working with us in getting some ideas together for tonight's presentation. Next slide. So I just want to remind the board and the community that everything we do, it centers around our West Way. That involves things that we do to impact our students, our schools, our communities, and our district. And one important component of this is a strategic plan. So are we doing things in a strategic manner? Are we evaluating those things? And then are we, when we evaluate them, are we leading up and finding the outcomes that we expect? And that's what a strategic plan does. It really outlines a plan for you, or outlines strategies for you, and identifies, then you're able to measure those things after a certain point to determine whether you're successful or not. Our goals are to review the district's mission, vision, and equity beliefs. We'll kind of talk about those tonight. We're doing an overview of current strategic plan. And then at the same time, discuss the phases, timeline of the plan, redesign, and alignment. We'll discuss the pillars and the board committee's responsibilities, our SMART goal creation, and development of key performance indicators to measure success. We'll discuss the role of strategic plan steering committee and identify the next steps. So let's go to our current mission, vision, and values. So every day, the West Alabama School District focuses on equity through deeper learning, fosters a sense of belonging, and educates the whole child so that every learner achieves success. Our vision. The West Milwaukee School District aspires to create experiences that build community and empower learners so they can live life on their own terms. Then our core values, trust, integrity, and respect. One of the things that we're going to be asking, not only the steering committee, but also our subcommittees, which in this particular case will be our board committees, is to evaluate the mission, vision, and the values. We're not trying to do an overall change of anything. If there's any modifications or upgrades that needs to happen, those are the kind of things that will work in our groups as well as committees to decide what those are. I think for the most part, I think our mission, vision, and core values are pretty good. I just think we need to make sure that we align the strategic plan to make sure that those things are identified in an accurate way. So just kind of giving an overview, first of all, of what the initial work will be. Again, just to look at these 3 things and to decide what are our feelings towards them. Are we fulfilling those things? And then what changes or what success updates need to be made. But keeping in mind, guys, and I want to front load this, everything that we're doing right now is to identify what the profile of a WAWF graduate looks like. So if this does not do that, then we need to modify that. Because graduation and beyond graduation, how we're preparing our kids for life, is what we have to build these types of things on. Okay. Next slide. So same with our equity beliefs. And we're going to have some serious conversations around sort of like the practice and then what we're preaching. Do they match? Are we just talking about things? Do we have them on paper? Or the practices that we see out there, do they match those things? Those are some serious conversations that I think as committees we have to have. In some cases, I think that when I look at this list, it may be too exhaustive because if you have too many things, how can you achieve? How can you follow through? So we may look at merging a couple of these into making it more reasonable, but at the same time, find out which ones are broader so they touch more and across different lines. But again, at the same time, profile of a graduate, I want to bring that back. How does all this stuff lead to that? So what I did when I was looking at the strategic plan is everything that we do in a strategic plan has to go back to our why. And I don't think there's anybody sitting up here, or anybody at home that does not want our students and our kids to be successful in life. I don't believe it. We may disagree. People may disagree with us in the community about certain things that they don't like, but the outcome of success of our kids, we all agree with that. How we get there is a whole different conversation at times, but success of our kids has to be number one. So when we look at the mission and vision, and this is the strategic plan that's currently in place, I believe that our core values of trust, integrity, and respect definitely align with success in life through college and career readiness, employee engagement and culture, communication and community relations, as well as financial stability and efficiency. Those may look familiar. Those are the committees that make up our work as board. So I think there's definitely an alignment there. The problem or the thing that we have to really work on, though, are within each one of these committees is making sure we have goals that are SMART, which means that they are systemic, they're measurable, they're at the same time they're aligned, are they reasonable? And then there's a time boundness on that. So going through that whole SMART model and rewriting these goals is going to be a significant part of our work that we're going to do. If we are saying that we're going to do something, again, it's going to be in the SMART model. It's not going to be something that's just unreasonable. That's not smart. And at the same time, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, as we get to the different committees, each one of the committees is going to be asked to create key performance indicators. I'll get into that a little bit more. But those are the things that you're going to put down as a committee. And 3 times out of the year, you're going to actually measure those things to see how you're doing, how we're doing as a district to make sure that we're meeting that particular target. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit further. But here are the phases. Stakeholder engagement, as you see, is up top. This is all of the work that we're doing from now on is around that particular understanding. We're going to gather insight from stakeholders, including students, parents, staff, board members, and community partners. How will stakeholders and how will students and parents and staff and community partners give more feedback? Well, we're going to have focus groups, right? That's going to be involved in the conversation. We've already actually started some of this stuff through our referendum sessions, through our listening and learning sessions. All this stuff connects. So in creating this, we realized, okay, we've already been doing like 1.5 years worth of data collection. So we're not starting from scratch on that, but we are really targeting now what the information that we want to lead us to a successful next 5 years. Okay. So here are some of the phases that we have. Vision and priority setting, I already kind of talked about, really looking at those 3 things, the mission, vision, and our core values and evaluating those, but establishing a steering committee. Okay, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Made up of stakeholders, we'll identify their roles and responsibilities, and we'll kind of talk about what we're expecting them to do. The board committees will also be in full effect, and we'll evaluate the current mission, vision, and equity beliefs and how they align with the profile of the WAWM graduate. Our data collection and analysis, I've already kind of talked about. We've already started collecting data. We're also going to have focus groups, meeting with parents, teachers, students, administration, and business leaders. I talked with a CTE teacher today. I may need to have a CTE focus group. we need to really dig down deep and understand how does things affect every single person in this district? Because when we're thinking about only talking with teachers, a lot of times CTE teachers, special education teachers, those teachers are actually left out of the conversation because they're smaller in numbers. So really trying to make sure that we have data that's inclusive of our entire population, I believe is going to be crucial to success, especially when you're talking about the graduate. CTE with graduates, because we've already said, if they're not going to college, then what are we doing to prepare them? So that conversation is going to be crucial for us. We're going to review academic, financial, and operational data. We'll conduct equity audits to identify systemic barriers. So that would be really looking at our equity beliefs right there. Analyze community demographics and future trends. Our action planning and key performance indicators. And I'll kind of get into this a little bit further on the next slide or so. But we're going to assign responsibilities to teams and departments. We'll define measurable outcomes and key performance indicators. Each committee will have key performance indicators that they will create in committee work. And 3 times a year, as I've said earlier, you guys will be given the task of measuring whether you're on target to meet that particular goal. We'll at the same time create a communication plan to ensure transparency and accountability, so like a scorecard, and then review the findings and work the steering committee for feedback. So steering committee comes back because we'll be checking with them periodically throughout this particular process. And then we'll, at some point, before we get to implementation, we'll bring it for the board probably a couple of times to talk about our work, talk about where we are, and to get feedback so the public can see. And then at some point, we'll expect the vote, and then we'll move to implementation. Any questions on anything that I've said so far? I'll pause. Questions from anyone? So in looking at our timeline, starting next month, we're looking at stakeholder engagement and community groups. Continuing our data collection analysis, as I spoke earlier, we'll look at the data that we've already collected as well as data that we're collecting from our focus groups. We'll look at our vision and priority setting and determine what adjustments need to be made. We'll look at action planning, so those will be those key performance indicators. And then that'll be the last step before we move for implementation. So just trying to give you sort of a guide. I'm very step by step. That's how my brain works. So just trying to make sure that we have that visual for everyone to understand where we are, and we'll provide constant updates for this. Let's go to the pillars, okay? So the pillars of our strategic plan. Oh,
Is it supposed to be July 2026?
Yeah, no.
there's a typo on there. It says 2025.
25.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
typo, I'm sorry. We'll change that. I apologize. Changed already. Thank you.
I was gonna say somebody's hacking into us.
Yeah. Pillars of strategic plan. So profile of a WAWM graduate. So again, that particular idea kind of reigns up top above everything. That's what it's going to be sort of be our anchor. So when you're looking at the work that you're doing in college and career readiness, employee engagement, culture, financial stability and efficiency, communications and community engagement, I'll talk about that in a second. Everything, and I can see my dad telling me, drop that anchor. That it all has to anchor into that particular profile building. So I added at the bottom the recreation and community services because that committee does not go anywhere. Okay. But in talking with Shelly, she's asking me like, what role do we play? Because we touch everybody. And so just keeping in mind that when it comes to the committee work and strategic plan work, Shelly's going to be jumping around to every single committee to provide input as far as your KPIs are concerned, but she will not have a separate pillar for the strategic plan. Athletics and all those kind of things, it covers everything across. Now, as far as committee work in general, her committee will still exist. That makes sense, okay? Let's go to key performance indicators. Okay. My favorite question, and everybody that works with me, they know that I'm going to ask, how are you measuring success? That's become my favorite question. How do you know that what you're doing is successful? And I think that question goes back to making sure that what you're doing is quantifiable, or is it a qualitative sense? Is it something that, you know, you can measure, it just feels like it's working? That doesn't sit well with me because I like number, right? So I want to know, are we really performing better, or is it really impacting? Now I'm measuring that based upon our numbers. Our KPIs, the definition is a measure a company's success versus a set of targets, objectives, or standards. So in other words, each one of our committees is going to have a goal. Each one of those committees will have KPIs that go with that particular goal. And then they're going to use the KPIs to measure whether that goal is successful. Bottom line, okay? It's just how we're going to measure it, if what we're doing is successful. And that's a 3-time of year approach. So we'll do it, and it will be in sync. So each committee will basically be, during this particular month, you're going to be asked to measure your KPIs. And I don't have to link the KPIs. Okay. I'll work to actually send you guys the template for the KPIs that I have. And so you can provide a visual, but we've already kind of created the template to try to drive what the work can look like. Each committee will come up with about 5 to 7 KPIs a piece, okay? All centered around their goal. That's also anchored into, this is your first quiz, anchored into what?
What power to graduate?
All right, I want to make sure you're paying attention, Mr. Becker over there. You can't get an answer.
Come on, yeah, look at your eyes. You look sleepy.
Don't put it in-
I'm sick. I'm saying, you need to go home.
All right, gotcha. All right. So any questions on that? KPIs, goal setting, anything? Any questions? All right, steering committee. One way that we felt that we could provide sort of more of a transparent process, an inclusive process of every single person or every single stakeholder group in our community was to have a steering committee, okay? The steering committee has absolute no power, okay? So I don't want to think this is a power grab. They're going to be controlling. No. It's an advisory. So the advisory group, okay? So what we're proposing is 3 board members at the choice of board president, 1 union rep, 2 city representatives, city schools are representatives. So we're thinking maybe Mayor Devine doesn't want to participate. Maybe he has Mr. Haas participate and I'm pretty sure Mr. Haas would do it. That's an example of something of what we would do. 3 building principals. So we're thinking elementary, middle, and high. 3 parents, 3 students. We'll take those from the voice. And then 3 community members. And these will be individuals who may be business owners or people who are investing in our community. We feel like it's very important to have such a big group. It is a big group, but a lot of voices in the room that will go through structured protocols and evaluations of the work that we're doing. Okay. So sort of the initial phase that we'll ask. So just really quickly, we'll be meeting 3 to 5 times throughout this process, about 90 minutes per. We'll establish sort of like plus deltas of the current strategic plan. We kind of want their feedback because we don't want to repeat anything that's not working. We want to be open, and everybody will go through that process, right? Just as steering committee. Provide an overview of strategic plan process. So everything that I'm doing with you today, I'll do it with them as well. And then I'll identify their role and timeline for their work. And I will let them know this is not a paid position. It's a volunteer position. And they should not be going around saying, I'm on a steering committee that can get you hired. So just let them know. It's not, I'm gonna bring it back to earth. This is really big. But just like we're going to update you as a board along the way, we'll do that with the steering committee. And any suggestions or anything that they're hearing or seeing, we'll take it into advisement. But at the same time, it's just good to have a lot of different voices inside of the room. Okay. But I did kind of include sort of what the definition of what the idea. Steering committee for a school district strategic plan plays a crucial role in guiding and overseeing the development and implementation of the plan. The committee is typically made up of key stakeholders, such as district leaders, teachers, parents, community members, and experts. Their responsibilities include setting the vision and goals for the district, ensuring alignment with the district's mission, monitoring progress, providing feedback, and making necessary adjustments to stay on track. So again, it don't read into some of this stuff too heavy. It's really just an advisement. Okay. So going forward, and this is what I wanted to kind of spend a couple of minutes on. Develop a timeline and overview to present to the board that outlines the purpose and objectives of the strategic plan. Done. Okay. Establish a district steering committee. That's my next step. Modify and update the current mission, vision, and values. We'll work with board committees as well as the steering committee to get feedback on that. Modify and update equity beliefs if needed. We'll work with both committees, both versions of the committees to get feedback on that. Okay. So previous data collections, listening and learning sessions, referendum sessions, community surveys, parental engagement surveys, employee engagement surveys, exit interviews, superintendent brown bag lunches. All of those are data points that I've already undertaken, or as a district we've already done. Okay. Sort of next steps with that, and that we did actually at the educators conference, was trying to figure out, okay, well, when we kick this off next year, how are we going to continue to collect data? Okay. So school perceptions, the company that we use for our referendum surveys, we've already talked to them. He sent me the proposal tonight. We'll work with them to create our surveys for next year for student, parents, as well as our teachers. So those are consistent data points we'll also have throughout this process. Okay. That's just an example of data. The next steps, as well as establish additional focus groups to collect additional data. When you're looking at data, you got to triangulate. You can't look at one set of data. You got to look at surveys. We got to look at data from report card test scores. We got to look at data from our CTE component, special education. And we got to look at everything to make some wise decisions as far as our graduate profile. And then board committees will establish action steps and KPIs, as I mentioned earlier, to measure success. Everything when we finish this, actually after year one, let me say it that way, after year one, as a superintendent of the district, I should be able to come to you and tell you whether we're on target, whether we're not on target, or whether we have a Hail Mary throw to go. Like, I should be able to tell you that specifically and why. And that's what I'm determined to do. That's what you should expect from me. Consistent updates, annual updates, but at the same time, guess who's giving me the feedback? I'm looking at your KPIs and I'm determining whether we're on target or whether we're not on target. And when we set the KPIs, again, they're going to be in a smart format to where we set these timetables, we set reasonable goals that are attainable, that at the same time will be able to contribute to what a graduate and identify what a graduate from our district looks like. Let me just talk to you really quickly about why we kind of went this particular route. And Jody, I realize you haven't talked yet, so this is your chance to talk. I'm talking too much tonight. When a kid is in 5th grade, as a parent, I think our parents should be able to look on our website and understand what their kid is getting in school that's going to lead them to success. And at the same time, a 5th grader should be able to articulate what they're doing to decide what their pathway is going to be in the future. 8th grade, same conversation. So when they're getting ready for 9th grade, guess what? They already know which pathway they're going into. Okay. That's part of the work that we have to work on and create as a district, because right now I think we're throwing things on the wall and just hoping these big. And I don't know who works well like that. I just don't. That makes me nervous. I much rather have a strategic approach in identifying and helping the community to identify what the next courses are going to be and how we're benefiting their kid, how we're supporting the development of their kid. We do an outstanding job of getting kids to the finish line and across that stage. What we fail as a district, and I'm saying as a superintendent, is the next steps in life. We have to do better at that. And I think this approach will help kids gain licensures before they graduate from high school, if they choose to not go to college, if they want to be a plumber. This would also include increasing our CTE options for all students. This will also include dual credit and AP options being increased for all of our students. This would also include starting earlier with our students who want to attain high school credits. These are all the things that we're expecting these committees to come up with, in particular, our college and career readiness components, to identify some of those KPIs that we can measure. Have increasing CTE offers for students. That will be a KPI. How does financial go into that? Because they're working on increasing the amount of funding that goes to CTE courses. So it all works hand in hand to make sure that we're on target and to reach our goal. Jody, what you got? Anything? What did I miss? I feel like that show on ESPN where the guy says, "What did I mess up on?"
Yeah. No, I thought you did a great job. I think two things I want to add is, and you mentioned this with the fifth grade example, but we want all of our students to be able to see themselves, right, in the profile of a graduate. So that's what we're working towards. And then we're also, the goal around the key performance indicators is really to kind of build a coalition of ownership around indicators that we can measure impact for. So those two nuances of a change, I think, in the next iteration of our strategic plan are what we're looking most forward to.
Can you repeat the second one, please, Jody?
Just building ownership around those key performance indicators in order to measure impact. It's those measurable pieces that we really need to hone in on.
Are you? Open for questions.
Questions?
Ms. Carr?
So Terrence, I think I need some clarity on the board committee piece of this. So the key performance indicators. So I would get my team, I'm on the finance committee. We would get together as a committee and we would choose 5 to 7 key indicators.
So great question. Okay. So it's not a choosing. Okay. We're going to develop a process for you that's going to help you and facilitate you in coming up with these 5. Okay. It's not going to be something where we expect you to just come up with 5, right? So we're going to be really working with you to identify what those things are.
Okay.
That there may be a need, just to be very honest with you, because this did come up and I don't think I said this. There may be a need to have a special meeting of the committee to say, okay, this meeting right here is going to be designated strictly for strategic plan work.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because you can't do everything within an hour and do the regular board work at the same time.
Right.
So there may be like a virtual option where we still put the link out to the public if they want to join. Because everything has to still be done and it's for the public.
Right. So we've agreed and we've gone through a process and we have our KPIs. And how are we able to, as a board committee, how are we able to weigh in 3 times a year as to whether or not we're meeting those? What data are we using? How are we? I mean, normally you guys come to the board and tell us. You give us information.
Sure.
And
so in your committee, that time that you're designating for KPI work,
right,
or strategic plan, the district person that's assigned to your committee, the cabinet member,
okay,
would bring the data that corresponds with that particular KPI.
Okay. Yep.
And so they would know ahead of time, okay, we're talking about KPIs. They'll be instructed you to bring the data that associates with all 7. Okay, what are those numbers looking like? And so we will just be very transparent. I can give you an easy one. If you're on the college and career readiness, if you have an attendance goal of the district of being 98%, okay, and if she or he brings the committee the attendance report that says we're 96%, guess what? We're not there.
Right.
So that's just an easy way for me to give you an answer to that particular question.
Right.
That
Okay. That does.
Okay.
That really helps me wrap my head around the process.
So I want to be I think what you're saying is, what you're wondering is, like we're going to make it very easy for you guys to do the work. We really are.
Yeah.
And we're going to come up with protocols for you to be able to do this information. You guys will not be asked to really go out and do any research. We'll provide all that for you. We'll guide you through the conversation.
Right. Well, then I would just like to say that I am in favor of this process because I really feel like the board is a part of it, a piece of it, and not just somebody that's you're just, reporting out to us. Yeah.
Ms. Kaiser?
I was just wondering, are we doing all the guidance and such in-house, or is like Melissa Matarazzo coming in for any of this, or just I'm new to this process, so.
Yeah, so we chose not to do a national organization or national firm to consult with us. You know, just to be honest with you, I've been here a year and a half and I just have not received any type of support on that particular plan. It's been very distant. And that's not a knock. It's just, I feel like we can get more by having people who are close to us. And again, this is not an overhaul. Okay, so we're not starting from scratch.
Yeah.
If we were starting from scratch, I would say, yeah, we need to bring in somebody who does this for us. That's not the case.
Yeah.
There are some cases where you do have to bring in somebody, but you're starting from scratch. We're not starting from scratch. We have a good framework for which to work. We just gotta really just make sure, we just gotta fine tune it a bit and make it a little bit more measurable. But I think what I want to get out of Ms. Carr's comment though is you guys are really gonna be involved in this process. You really are. And that's important, especially when you're going out in the community, you can talk that talk. Right? That's important, guys. And you're not talking hypotheticals, you're talking about what the data really says and how you're measuring that. You're part of that conversation. Whether you want to be or not.
Other questions? So I have one. And it really focuses on the community and really stakeholder input about the strategic plan as we move forward. So, and like looking at something, the next thing is putting together a steering committee. The complaint that we always hear is that, you know, I don't have time to participate in these meetings, but I still want to have my voice heard. And especially when you're talking about three people from each of those groups. So we talked about using school perceptions to reach out to certain groups, but I wonder if it might, if that should almost be a first step before we form a steering committee to get feedback from some of these groups, from our community as a whole, from our parents, from our staff, about our strategic plan and where we're going next, to get some kind of more broader feedback about the different things that we're looking at considering for that strategic plan, and then use that information as part of the steering committee directives. Like we heard back from the teachers, like this is something. We heard back from the parents, this is something. We heard back from the community, this is something. And that could be worked with the steering committee to then focus down on what those things are going to be.
That's very similar to what we did for the FAC committee. The FAC committee actually, a survey was sent out. And then that information was how we, right, Joe? Because they would, yeah. Been a while, but yes, I'm not sure, because it came back and it was like where people would be on certain things. So I believe that's how we did similarly when we were trying to figure out about right sizing the district and looking at schools.
So a couple of comments, and I've wrote down, I think that's a great idea. To have a community survey, but I think the timing of when you do it we can go into a lot of different conversations about that. But keeping in mind though, we already pretty much know as a district, and because I've heard it over and over again, profile of a graduate. Okay?
Right.
If we were starting from scratch and didn't have that idea already, then I would say, yeah, we got to start there first. I don't think that's necessarily a place we have to start. I think it's a place we need to go. I agree with that. But I think if we do the survey, then that would really push the work of the committees to really get more granular when they're coming up with the different KPIs. But from a pillar standpoint, I'm not looking at knocking what we have down. I think we have a pretty good sound. I think it covers everything across the board that we need. I just think we need to get a little bit deeper as far as like how we're doing it though. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I just worry about identifying three people from each of these groups or however it might be, and then working on a process that we've already kind of created. And I understand we're not starting from scratch, but looking at the things that we're looking at building upon, and there's different ways that we could go about doing that, and asking for feedback on that before we start coming up with KPIs and things like that we're going to be using to measure something. I'm just trying to think of ways to get more community buy-in from that perspective. So that when we're like, we're doing this because this is what our strategic plan says, let's say, well, I had nothing to do with your strategic plan, right? So like the strategic plan, well, we sent a survey out, we got your input, and based on that input, we made this. Whether they fill the survey out or not, doesn't matter, or if we took their ideas or not, doesn't matter. The fact is that we asked. Before we got to the point where we were saying, oh, here's a steering committee, it's gonna tell us who's going to inform.
No, but see, I think you don't give the steering committee, right now, the steering committee is basically an advisory.
No, I understand.
They're not really, they really are not having that, the input that Dr. Maybe they're really not there. They're more advising the plan. But I take what you're saying and I agree that it needs to happen. The community survey, I think, does need to happen. Where it happens is probably where we need to discuss it. I'm not saying I disagree with your idea at all. I agree with it. But I think right now too, if we wait, then we're also pushing back our time frame to probably October. We're looking at, if we hold off on anything right now, that's another factor. So just putting it out there on
The concern, I don't have an issue necessarily doing things at the same time. The only concern I had when I noted is, because I was on the strategic planning committee for West Dallas, and there was this was years ago, but there was a really a big push to make sure it was pretty diversified. I'm concerned if we're pulling students from the boys. I want to make sure that we're getting a lot of those students have, I just want to make sure that we are actually, like, when we're doing a committee like this, that we're really getting a good array of voices. Because it's, and again, looking at even looking at city representation, I know like Mayor Devine, even if I don't know if you would have time for it, but, looking at maybe, maybe an older person or somebody that we typically wouldn't necessarily seek out, because it seems like we get the same feedback from the same people. And that's where we need to kind of maybe, especially if we're looking at profile of a graduate. My big thing is I want to hear from people in CTE. Like, I want to know what we can do to, enforce our trades and things like that. Because I think or like you said, like, our parents being able to, like, I don't know what the options are. I couldn't tell you, and I'm a board member, what all of our different options are in terms of, what my kids to do outside of college. And I know we do have programs and I know we highlight them, but I just don't think we highlight them. And you know what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying?
Okay.
So I want to make sure that, this steering committee really is really bringing in a lot of voices, and that it's not the same voices that we usually, or we're hearing.
Let me ask for the group, do you think a steering committee is a bad idea?
No.
I don't think it's a bad idea. It just, it limits. And I understand their advisory, but there's, that's how it works. It's who's got time to do it, to be able to come and participate in it and to then provide that input to the board is critical. And it'd be love, I'm sure there's lots of people would love to be on it, won't be able to because of other commitments. And that's where I was getting the broader kind of survey that more people will be able to participate in, and then the steering committee then taking that information and going forward with it as far as their advisory capacity. With the understanding that the board committee's work would also be tailing into that. But again, I would see the survey as helping to inform that work as well. Saying, like, for each part of it, like, the survey would be broken down by your pillars, right? And then they would have things in it that we're going to be considering moving forward for our strategic plan for the next 5 years, the things we want to build upon, that we've started, some things that we're considering changing or modifying. And then the committee work would then kind of have a starting point, if you will, which I know you said that process is going to happen, but I don't know if that's like an internal process that would be coming from admin about how that's going to be broken down. So I guess what I'm saying is, instead of that happening, having it come from a community standpoint or a community group standpoint, and then the admin can then take the information from that and give that to the committee.
So I think that's just another point of data, though. I mean,
yeah, I think
I don't think that's a bad idea at all, but I don't think it should be the sole point of data. Like, we have to use a number of metrics to, then it's going to be important for the person who's facilitating that particular session to triangulate things and make it understandable for the audience. So I think that if we get with, school perceptions and I tell them that we need to want to do a survey for the strategic plan and figure out what their timeline is like. I mean, honestly, we're not looking at board work. I think we said till March, right? That's the timeline. April.
Yes,
March, April, right? Is that right?
that is correct. I would,
Go ahead.
oh, can I offer a suggestion too, to know is, so we put stakeholder engagement, you know, across the top for a very intentional reason. I think, you know, I think we're definitely all in agreement that a community survey needs to happen and we can talk about the when that should happen. I also wonder if we can do a better job of eliciting community response along the way with our subcommittees. I think we are very open meetings, transparent with our agendas. And our community would have ample opportunity along those way in both subcommittee and full board committee meetings, you know, certainly to weigh in and offer some incentive or feedback along the way too. I think that's another way to gain sort of formative feedback rather than sometimes what can be perceived for our families as EduSpeak surveys that they really don't know how they see themselves, you know, living within that. So I think there's ways that we can work to expand our opportunities for feedback with our spheres of influence.
Okay. I mean, I'm not here to be a roadblock, but I just, something that I know I've seen our districts do this as a way to get that buy-in, like, hey, we asked you, you told us, and then when there's any sort of concern about, hey, we asked you, you told us, you know, we're going down this route from the perspective of input from the community and we're trying to then implement that input in what we're moving forward with for the next 5 years. So that's all I'm saying. And so I'm okay with this process as we move forward in it. But I think like where we have opportunities to gather that input from a larger audience, I think we should always try to find ways to do that if we can. With understanding not everyone's going to take the survey, right? Now, even with all the other surveys done, you know, we don't get 100% response rates, right? So I understand that also, but even with the committee work, again, someone has the time to attend that committee meeting or write up the thing to say they're going to do it, like, versus I think surveys, a lot of times people are like, okay, I can take 20 minutes to get this off, and then I'll forget about it. But then that's a more conglomerate of kind of what the parents think, that the staff thinks, the community thinks. So did you have what? Oh, Jay?
I was actually going to say, I really like the idea of having our committee meetings be solely dedicated to the strategic plan. And then that way we could invite parents to that one. They're always invited. Their parents and community members are always invited. But if it was specifically, this is the agenda item and we put it out there, you know, if you'd like to join us for this, I think that would be really a smart idea. And I really just think that, you know, community members and parents are really looking to us. They want a strategic plan and we can do the work. We're willing to roll up our sleeves and do the work. I think what's important is parents need to have a really, really good understanding and be in agreement of what is a profile of a graduate. That's the key piece. If we can get parents somehow on, Let's Talk or anywhere, put it out there, you know, what does that mean to you? I would want to see that data. I would want so that as a whole community, we know what that looks like. Now we make that final say but we take all of that information. That's where they can have their say. All of this kind of strategic planning is really a lot of work and you have to really hone in and know a lot. And I feel like that should be the job of the administrators and the board and transparently showing it and come to meetings and you can see what it's all about. But if we can agree on one thing, what do you want to see? What do you want that to look like?
I like that idea, especially having two kids now that have graduated and not gone to, sorry, losing my voice, of four-year colleges.
Yeah.
Is to be able to, I just totally lost my.
Yeah, for them to be able to see, to know.
Well, yeah, or just put
What
the
else is
question
there?
out there, like you were saying, it's like, instead of like a survey is, that is the question. That
That's
is
the
the survey.
question.
What do
Yep.
you think a West Dallas, West Milwaukee graduate looks like or is? And
Yep.
just literally that blanket question and see what we get back.
Yep.
Otherwise, my question earlier was, if not that, then what are going to be the questions in the survey? Otherwise, I was afraid it would go so broad that how do you now hone it in on a few things, because you can't give, 100 things as much as attention as you can give 10 and feel like you're actually accomplishing anything. So I thought maybe just to ask it as that one main question and see what we get back and pick the top, whatever to focus on or something.
Thanks, sir.
Right.
I think keeping in mind, this is an advisory board, right? I think the main thing that is critical here, and I think Ms. Steele was getting to that, is we need to make sure that we have a wide perspective of backgrounds and we just need to make sure it's not the same people saying the same things, right? We need to have people from different schools, from different sides of towns, from different backgrounds, so that we have a well-informed group that can help advise and help guide. If we have too many of the same voices, we're not doing what we need to do. So we just need to make sure it's not the same people that we're always tapping on the shoulder, that we're having people who have those diverse perspectives so that it can help guide the way that we need it to.
Makes sense.
Other questions? All right, sounds good. Looking forward to the work and moving forward. So that is going to end our workshop for this evening. And before we take a break to convene into our executive session, I look for a motion, a second, to convene into executive session in accordance with Wisconsin statute 19.85, parent 1, parent C and G, to complete a performance evaluation rating of the superintendent using a consensus process and to consider compensation or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
So moved.
Second.
Right, only a roll call for that. Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Ms. Kaiser,
Yes.
Ms. Deal,
Yes.
Mr. Burns is excused, Ms. Carr,
Yes.
Mr. Sikich,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
President Lee.
Yes, all right, we'll take a brief recess to get into executive session.
Move to approve superintendent's salary and contract terms as discussed in closed session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Then I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.